They never tell you the exact moment it begins to slip. Not the loud arguments, not the obvious disrespect, not even the distance that comes later. It begins quietly, almost invisibly, in the way she starts listening to you less, in the way your words carry just a little less weight than they used to, in the way her eyes stop searching for your approval and start measuring your reactions instead. And you don't notice it at first because nothing dramatic has happened, but something far more dangerous has already begun. She has realized she can control you. And once that realization settles into her subconscious, everything changes. Not because she wants to dominate you in some cartoonish sense, but because something deeper in her instinct reorganizes the entire dynamic. Respect begins to erode. Attraction begins to thin. And you, without realizing it, begin performing more, giving more, explaining more, trying to fix something you don't even understand. But the more you try, the worse it gets. Because the problem is not what you are doing wrong on the surface. The problem is what you have already surrendered underneath. Machiavelli understood something most men spend their entire lives learning too late. He wrote, "Men should either be treated generously or destroyed, because they can avenge light injuries, but cannot avenge severe ones." But hidden inside that brutal observation is a deeper truth about power. It is not the action that defines the dynamic. It is the perception of consequence. The moment someone believes they can act without consequence, they stop respecting you. Not gradually, structurally. And that is exactly what happens in modern relationships. You were taught to be understanding, to be patient, to be emotionally available, to communicate, to prove your value through consistency and kindness. And none of these things are inherently wrong, but when they are not anchored in something stronger, something immovable, they become signals, signals that say, "I will adjust myself to keep you." And once that signal is detected, the entire game shifts. Because respect does not come from how much you give, it comes from what you refuse to give up. That is the part no one told you. You thought attraction was built on comfort, on making her feel safe, secure, and prioritized. But what you did not understand is that comfort without tension creates predictability. And predictability, over time, kills emotional intensity. Not because she is shallow, not because she is manipulative, but because human desire, especially feminine desire, feeds on contrast, on uncertainty, on the subtle question that never fully gets answered, can I fully control this man? And when the answer becomes yes, the story ends. Look back carefully at every moment things started to change. It was never when you were at your strongest. It was when you started compromising small things, letting things slide, laughing off disrespect you should have addressed, explaining yourself when you should have remained silent, saying yes when something inside you was already saying no. Those moments seem insignificant in isolation, but together they form a pattern. And that pattern teaches her exactly who you are, not what you say you are, what you tolerate. Because your boundaries are not defined by your words, they are defined by your reactions. And once your reactions become predictable, once she knows exactly how far she can push before you fold, you are no longer a mystery, you are a system she can navigate. And no one respects a system they have already mastered. This is where most men make their fatal mistake. They try to regain respect by increasing effort, more attention, more affection, more reassurance. They believe if they just become better, more consistent, more emotionally available, things will return to how they were. But what they don't understand is that they're solving the wrong problem entirely. Because the issue was never a lack of effort, it was a lack of resistance.
Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must learn how not to be good when circumstances demand it, not because cruelty is the goal, but because naivete invites exploitation. Translate that into your life and it becomes clear. If you cannot hold your ground when tested, your goodness becomes weakness, and weakness, no matter how well-intentioned, cannot command respect. You don't lose her when you stop being kind. You lose her when your kindness costs you your authority. There is a difference. A man who is kind from strength is selective. His attention is not automatic. His approval is not easily earned. His presence carries weight because it is not given freely. But a man who is kind from fear behaves differently. He gives before it is earned. He explains himself before he is questioned. He prioritizes her comfort over his own truth. And without realizing it, he trains her to see him not as a force, but as a resource. And resources are used. This is why she begins to test you. Not consciously, not maliciously, but instinctively. Small things at first, delayed replies, subtle contradictions, emotional shifts that don't quite make sense, moments where she watches how you react more than what you say. And every time you overreact, over-explain, or overcompensate, you give her data. Data that tells her exactly how stable or unstable you are. And once she knows that your emotional state can be influenced by her behavior, she knows she holds leverage. That is the moment respect begins to fade. Because respect is not built on how much someone likes you. It is built on how much influence they believe they have over you. The less controllable you are, the more stable you appear. The more stable you appear, the more respect you command. And the more respect you command, the more powerful your presence becomes. That is the paradox most men never understand. You don't gain respect by trying to be loved. You gain respect by being unmovable. And that does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean becoming distant or aggressive. It means becoming centered. It means that your decisions are not easily swayed, that your emotional state is not easily disrupted, that your direction is not negotiated under pressure. It means that when you say something, it carries weight, not because you force it, but because you embody it. Because the truth is simple. The moment she realizes she cannot control you, she begins to see you differently. Not as someone she can shape, but as someone she must understand. And that shift is where attraction is reborn.
There is a moment, subtle, almost invisible, when everything reverses. It doesn't happen when you say something clever. It doesn't happen when you try harder. It doesn't even happen when you pull away in some dramatic display. It happens the first time she realizes you are no longer reacting the way she expects. That her usual levers, emotion, silence, tension, withdrawal, no longer move you the same way. And in that moment, something ancient inside her pauses. Because for the first time, she cannot predict you. And what cannot be predicted must be respected. This is where most men misunderstand the idea of control. They think it is about dominating her, overpowering her, forcing outcomes. That is not power. That is insecurity dressed as authority. Real power, the kind Machiavelli spoke of, is quieter, colder, and far more effective. It is the ability to remain unchanged when everything around you is trying to change you. He wrote, "A wise man does at once what a fool does at last." And what does the fool do last? He finally learns to stop chasing what disrespects him. He finally learns to walk away from what diminishes him. He finally learns that not every battle is worth explaining. But by then, he has already lost years trying to negotiate his worth with people who never intended to value it. You are no longer that man. You do not wait until the end to correct your position. You correct it the moment you feel the shift. When she withdraws, you do not chase.
When she tests, you do not perform. When she creates tension, you do not rush to resolve it. You observe, you decide, you remain. Because the strongest signal you can ever send is not what you say, it is what you refuse to react to. And this is where your transformation becomes visible. She speaks with a sharper tone than usual, and you don't flinch. Not because you didn't notice, but because you chose not to reward it. She delays her response, expecting you to double text, to show urgency, to reveal dependence, and you don't move. Your time continues, your focus remains intact. She introduces emotional pressure, subtle guilt, an attempt to make you bend slightly off your center, and you stay exactly where you are. No drama, no explanation, no negotiation. And this is where the shift begins, because she is used to men whose emotional state is tied to her behavior, men who adjust themselves constantly to maintain her approval, men who, without realizing it, orbit around her moods. But you are not orbiting anything. You are fixed, centered, self-contained. And for the first time, she feels something unfamiliar. She feels resistance. Not the kind that pushes her away, the kind that holds its ground. And that resistance creates tension, not conflict, but polarity, not distance, but gravity. Because what she cannot move, she begins to respect, and what she respects, she begins to invest in. This is the point where everything you were taught begins to collapse completely. You were told that love requires constant reassurance, that you must always communicate, always explain, always soften the edges to maintain harmony. But harmony without hierarchy becomes chaos, and when there is no clear emotional center in a relationship, someone must take that role. If it is not you, it becomes her by default. And when she becomes the emotional center, something inside her becomes exhausted. Because she does not want to lead you. She wants to feel led by something stronger than her own emotions, not controlled, not dominated, but anchored. And that anchor must be you. But you cannot become that anchor if you are constantly adjusting yourself to avoid friction, because friction is not the enemy. Friction is what reveals structure. Without it, everything feels soft, undefined, uncertain. And uncertainty in your foundation creates instability in her perception of you. This is why your no becomes your most powerful tool. Not the aggressive no, not the emotional no, the calm, unshakable no that requires no defense, the kind that does not seek approval after being spoken, the kind that stands on its own without needing to be understood. Because the moment you start explaining your no, it becomes negotiable. And your value follows the same rule. Machiavelli warned that he who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. But command in this context is not about giving orders. It is about commanding your own behavior first, your impulses, your reactions, your need to be liked, your fear of loss. Because if those things control you, then you are not in control of anything. And she will feel it, always. This is why detachment is not optional, it is foundational. Not detachment as indifference, but detachment as independence, the ability to engage without becoming dependent on the outcome, the ability to care without needing reassurance, the ability to walk away without collapsing internally. Because the moment you need her to stay in order to feel stable, she becomes the one holding the power. And power, once transferred, is rarely returned voluntarily. So you reclaim it, not through force, but through alignment. Your time aligns with your priorities. Your actions align with your standards. Your responses align with your values. And slowly, everything about you becomes coherent. There is no contradiction between what you say and what you do, no gap between your words and your behavior. And that coherence creates something rare, credibility. Not the kind you announce, the kind that is felt. Because now when you speak, it carries weight. When you withdraw, it means something. When you invest, it is earned. And when you walk away, it is final. That is when she understands. Not through logic, not through conversation, but through repeated experience. She realizes that your presence is not guaranteed, that your attention is not automatic, that your approval is not something she can manufacture through behavior. And that realization does something profound. It makes her invest. Not because you asked her to, but because now she sees the value she could lose. This is the part most men get wrong. They try to make themselves valuable by giving more, but value is not created through excess. It is revealed through scarcity, through selectivity, through the quiet understanding that not everyone gets access to you the same way. And when she feels that difference, when she sees that your energy is not distributed equally, that your attention is intentional, that your time is protected, she begins to treat you differently. Because now she is no longer evaluating you, she is qualifying herself to you. That is the shift. That is the moment the entire dynamic flips. But it only happens when you stop trying to win her and start refusing to lose yourself. Because in the end, this was never about her. It was about you. Your standards, your discipline, your ability to stand alone without collapsing into need. Because the man who cannot stand alone will always be controlled by the one who can walk away. And the man who can walk away without anger, without drama, without hesitation, becomes impossible to replace. That is the man she respects. That is the man she desires. That is the man she cannot control. And that is the man you become the moment you decide that your value is not something to be negotiated, proven, or earned through sacrifice. It is something you protect relentlessly. Because once you understand this, everything changes. Your presence changes, your relationships change, your standards rise, and the people who once overlooked you begin to feel your absence before they feel your presence. And when that happens, you are no longer chasing anything. You are being chosen. Not because you tried harder, but because you finally stopped being controllable. If this shifted your perspective, don't just watch, apply it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and support the movement through the link in the description.